The reason we were successful in the underdog campaign is because of many of you that are here today. Many of you who believed in me from the beginning and who actually helped us out when a lot of people didn't give us credit. And I just really want to thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart. I see there's too many for me to mention, so I'm not going to mention anyone because then I'll feel bad that I left somebody out. But you know who you are. You know who was there from the beginning. And I want to thank you sincerely. What is the Idaho Freedom Foundation? This organization, according to your bylaws, this organization develops and advocates the principles of individual liberty, personal responsibility, private property rights, economic freedom, and limited government. You know, when I first read that, I thought, why do we need an organization that advocates for these things? And then I watched that. And I watched it every single day in Congress, where people don't understand that we came here to have a limited government, to have limited responsibilities in Washington, where they think that Congress is supposed to be a super legislature, a body of people that actually does all things for all people. And when you see congressmen of both parties, not just Democrats, but Republicans and Democrats, who do not understand that their duty and their responsibility is actually to have less government, not more government. So I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank you for starting this organization, because we needed to be reminded as a nation why we were founded. We needed to be reminded why we did the things that we did, and why our founding fathers were willing to pledge their honor and their lives for this great nation. These values, as you can see, and I love the fact that you have that clip, because it actually just highlights how these values are eroding and they're being challenged on a daily basis. I actually was listening to MSNBC just this afternoon before I came here, and I was watching Chris Matthews just going crazy because Republicans believe in limited government, and they believe that we shouldn't actually legislate everything as a solution for every problem. We're challenged by the media constantly. We're challenged by those in power. We're challenged by the elite. And we're challenged by people who think that government can do a better job running individuals' lives. And I think that's wrong. And I think that's what this organization stands for. I always knew that Congress was out of control, but after only a few days, I realized how wrong I was. They're really out of control. The federal government spends every single day about $9.8 billion. Think about that. Governor, what's our budget in Idaho?
2.4.
$2.4 billion. $9.8 billion every single day being spent in Washington, D.C. And of that, $3.8 billion is borrowed. That means that every 12 hours, we're borrowing as much money about as we need to run the entire state of Idaho in an entire year. That's shameful. And I think we should be really concerned about what's happening here in America. That's why I'm proud of having been a state legislator. In the state legislature, our budget, we had a requirement to balance our budget. The deficit and our debt are not abstract problems, and they're problems that we need to address in a serious manner because they have real consequences. Any of you who last month were able to see in Boise, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mike Mullen, he told a large crowd that among all the threats to our national security, and think of all the threats to our national security, think of Iran, think of Pakistan, think of all the things that are happening in the world, he said that our debt is the most grave. Our national debt is a symptom of government that has completely lost all sense of limitation. Since being in Congress, I have learned about federal agencies and departments that I had no idea they even existed. And they all spend money. They spend my money and your money. Programs are created that pile on new programs on top of old programs. without even having any regard to the actual results. I had the opportunity to visit our troops in Afghanistan and in Pakistan, and well, I met with the troops in Iraq, but I visited many people in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iraq. And I was speaking to a government agency in Afghanistan, and we asked a simple question. It's a question that I think state legislators ask every single day. Tell me how you're spending your money. Tell me how many programs you have actually started with the money that you're spending here in Afghanistan. The answer was, we don't know how many programs we have started. We don't know how many programs we have completed. But I can tell you how much we have spent. I was outraged. They didn't know how many programs they had started. They didn't know if they had completed any of those programs. But they sure know, and they knew, and they were proud that they had spent billions and billions of your dollars. I was ashamed of the work that they were doing, and I couldn't believe that we had an agency that was spending billions of our dollars, and they were asking for more money, because to them the metric was not what they had accomplished or what they had achieved, but how much money they had spent. Because 3 years ago, they had spent X. Last year, they had spent 2X. And this year, they wanted to spend 3X. And they believed that that was actually something worth applauding. It is not. It is time for us to get back to fiscal responsibility, to understand the limited role that the federal government should have in our lives. Part of the freshman class is one of the biggest in the last few years, in many, many years. And there's more than 80 new Republicans, and they all come from all walks of life. We have doctors, we have business owners, we have farmers, we have a gentleman who owns a pizza company. We have another gentleman who's a funeral director. We have people, half of our class has never even been elected to office before. And I'm really proud to tell you that many of them believe just like you do, that we should actually rein in government and we should do the right things about the work that we're doing. And I think that is because our class understands the reality, because they came from a real world. We're also willing to face the reality that America is facing at this time. Although we're all Republicans, we recognize that our party shares in the blame. And I think that's really important. We can't just be blaming the other side. Our party has been responsible for some of the things that are happening in America. And I think it's important that we understand that, because that's the only way we're going to be able to solve the problems that are facing America. We need to examine every program for fraud, waste, and abuse. I think Wayne was just talking about that. Are taxpayers' dollars being spent properly and effectively? Is the Department of Agriculture truly serving the best interests of our nation's farmers and ranchers? Is the Department of Labor putting unfair burdens on manufacturers and other employers? And this is my favorite. Is the Environmental Protection Agency putting unfair burdens on pretty much everyone?
Hell yeah.
I think we've begun to make a little bit of headway in what we're doing, but one thing that I have learned is that it's a big job. And there's a lot of people back there, even members of our own party, are not willing to make the changes that are necessary. I actually cast a vote of what I thought was a senseless continuing resolution. I cast my vote against it, not because I didn't think it was positive that we were actually cutting some money, but we actually had made a promise to the American people that we were going to cut $100 billion in spending in our first year. And it wasn't even close. And I thought it was important for us to draw a line. There should have been a line in the sand that we were not willing to move from. And we were not willing to do it. And I'm glad that I cast that vote. But I'm still hopeful. Because at least now we're talking about how much we're going to cut. If you remember 2 years ago, we were talking about how much we were going to spend. Just last year, when the Republicans took over the House, the president spoke about how we were just going to hold everything harmless. We were just not going to spend anymore. And at least the Republicans are starting the conversation about cutting spending in Washington, D.C. Even though it wasn't enough for what I wanted, I still think that it's a positive direction for America, that we're talking about cutting billions and trillions of dollars in government waste. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did have the opportunity to delist the wolves. We did Thank you.